the 1,000th COVID-19 vaccine administered. St. Martin protected together. MP for the NA says St. Martin has to indeed come to terms for the situation we are now faced with. And Prime Minister defends her stance on the sharing of information. Those are the headlines for Tuesday, March the 2nd, 2021. Good evening, viewers. This is SXM Daily News, and I'm Valerie from Clinton. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And as usual, we have a packed newscast for you, so let's get started. In our first story, an urgent Central Committee meeting of Parliament on the discussion of the country reform package priorities and objective measures for 2021 was held yesterday, Monday, March the 1st. The Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Sylvia Jacobs, was in attendance. While speaking at the meeting, the Prime Minister defended her stance on the sharing of information, of which she said she has been accused of not providing information and is deliberately stalling the sharing of information with Parliament. The Prime Minister said it is not in accordance with reality, so she expounded further.
The last couple of weeks, a couple of members of Parliament expressed publicly that the government, and specifically the Prime Minister, my person, is deliberately stalling into the sharing of information with Parliament, and by doing so is disrespecting the role that Parliament has to play. I am paraphrasing, of course, Madam Chairlady. However, I would like to make it very clear to the viewing public as well as to all of the honourable members that is definitely not in accordance with the reality. Although I may address some of the questions in the mentioned statements and other questions asked specifically by the members of Parliament through the media or in letters to my person, I first would like to share with all how transparent government has been on this subject. At the end of January and early February of this year, I made my first appearance in this hall to present to you, the members of Parliament, the necessary amendments for the cost-cutting measures that were a requirement instituted by the Netherlands as conditions for liquidity support on a second tranche. During those sessions, I also received a lot of questions about the country package. For example, one of the questions was asked on the implementation of the country packages, the steps that would need to be taken and by whom. Madam Chair, these answers were provided. All the questions that were asked at that time were answered. Therefore, the information in our purview, or in our, let's say, opinion, was provided. I have also provided Parliament with the relevant and necessary documents pertaining to the country package. Today, by means of a presentation, I wish to refresh the memories of all present and those within the listening and viewing audience, especially those tuned in for the very first time, on all of the written information that has been shared with Parliament. By mid-April, indications were already showing that if we could not restart our economies by summer, that we would be needing financial support from the Netherlands. Although we had hoped for a speedy recovery in the economic sector, that didn't happen. And being proactive, St. Martin sought the help of the Netherlands. During that time, all three Prime Ministers of Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin met with the State Secretary BZK on an almost weekly basis, as we were still in the middle of a crisis. I was, at the time, heading the Emergency Operations Center, and as such, was also here in Parliament on a bi-weekly basis, so every 2 weeks, to update on all things COVID-19 related, including the economic fallout and what that would mean for our liquidity position. On May 19th, 2020, I was requested and appeared before Parliament virtually to give an update on the COVID situation. The next day, I returned for our bi-weekly meetings where I continued to update Parliament on the matters. I did not get to finalize the day prior. On June 24th, 2020, upon request, I returned to Parliament virtually with an update on how the discussions were going with the Kingdom about further liquidity and the upcoming conditions, which were at the time, for the most part, unknown.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister also gave a PowerPoint presentation on the country reform packages and gave a timeline of the meetings that was held over the past year.
4 days before the Kingdom Council of Ministers meeting that will be scheduled for July 10th, we finally received the documents which turned out to be a kingdom law, a consensus kingdom law on a Caribbean reform entity. We quickly requested a meeting with Parliament. As government, we requested that meeting and was granted a meeting on July 8th, 2 days before the Kingdom Council of Ministers would meet. We all know what happened thereafter. While I was still in the Netherlands, I joined a closed-door virtual parliamentary meeting on July 10th after the Kingdom Council of Ministers to update Parliament on the discussions held and to answer questions. My next appearance in Parliament was August 7th, and again on August 26th, 7th, and 28th, together with the Minister of Finance to update on developments since the Kingdom Council of Ministers meeting of July 10th wherein it was determined that St. Martin would not be able to have the discussions on the third tranche conditions. My next appearance on this particular matter would be in December of 2020, which the government requested and where we were able to get your support to sign the mutual agreement that had been presented at that time. In addition to all the appearances made in Parliament, documents were being shared, and the next slide will display an overview of the information shared. So on July 7th, there was a letter on the unknown entity. This was shared. 8th, documents outlining what the CRE was. On the 11th, counter-proposal on the entity which government worked on. 25th, the Council of Advice, questions on conditions imposed and the legal review by the Department of Legal Affairs. On September 2nd, Council of Advice on the CHE-CRE. December 12th, correspondence with the State Secretary and final steps on agreement with the third tranche conditions. December 14th, communication with the State Secretary on agreements for the third tranche conditions. And December 22nd, signed mutual agreement and country packages were shared. On December 30th, they were shared once again because of a technical difficulty. First, we only shared one package or one document, and afterwards 4 documents were shared.
Meanwhile, Member of Parliament for the National Alliance, the Honorable Angelique Rameau, said that St. Martin has to indeed come to terms that we are accountable for the situation we are now faced with. Instability in government and parliament over the past 10 years and lack of significant progress over the years have led us to these discussions that we are now having today. The Member of Parliament also posed a number of questions to the Prime Minister.
St. Martin has to indeed come to terms that we are accountable for the situation that we're now faced with. Our instability in government and parliament over the past 10 years and lack of significant progress over the years has led us to these discussions that we are having today. This is for me extremely unfortunate that this is how we are brought to the table to discuss reform, especially in our education sector. Although I am very much in favor of reform, as I believe any reform that would secure improvements for the people of St. Martin is a win for all. However, I find myself asking this question, at what cost? Should reform come at the expense of autonomy? I do understand good governance is a kingdom affair. However, that should not negate the fact that our autonomy is laid out in the Charter of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Reading this national package, there are just certain innuendos that I believe contradict our basic rights as an autonomous country. Therefore, through you, Madam Chair Lady, to our Honorable Prime Minister, I have the following questions. The statements and measures in the document are quite general and make some general assumptions about the status of the 3 countries. My first question is, on what basis are these assumptions, generalizations made? Was any research done on the status quo of all of the subject categories mentioned in this document? For example, under education, the purpose states to realize a basic quality of education, which eludes that our educational system does not provide such. Based on what data and information was this presumption and the many others made in this document? As it is quite ironic because most of our systems which utilize Dutch as the language of instruction derive from the Netherlands. Honorable Prime Minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, a glimmer of hope for me in your presentation is that the implementation agenda is a working document that can be changed as we go. Therefore, my question is, how will any changes or amendments to the agenda be agreed upon by the Netherlands and St. Martin? So, for example, if whilst executing the work and you see that you initially thought, and what you see you initially thought would not work out in the best interest of St. Martin can now work, how open will St. Martin be to make these changes? What is the process should a stalemate be met? Meaning what you think is best is not what the Netherlands may think is best. So then who decides? In the agreement under the financial flows, it states the COHO can independently initiate, promote, and implement projects, provide grants to citizens and companies, including public companies, or to participate in equity capital of companies. It further goes on to state, as mentioned, the CRE can, as appropriate and on the basis of an adequate business case, support reform projects within the entity's budget. My question to you, Madam Chair Lady, to the Honorable Prime Minister is, who assesses these independent initiatives of the COHO? How is it possible that an entity established in consensus with the 4 countries of the kingdom can initiate projects independent of the government of St. Martin? Does this not conflict with our autonomy established in the Charter of the Kingdom of the Netherlands? Let me clarify that this was taken from the agreement that is available online on the BZK website. In the presentation, you indicated and pointed out some of the measures that correlate with the current governing program. Can this be said for the majority of the current governing program? Does it fall in line with the majority of measures that are being brought about as a result of the CRE? Do you see it as a support or acceleration of the goals and outcomes outlined in the current governing program? How did the Council of Ministers determine what is considered priority as you briefly outlined in your presentation? In Section B, B2, the cost and effectiveness of the public sector, the document states, and this is my translation, of course, it is not an objective to dispose of or partially dispose of public and semi-public companies and government entities that serve a defined public interest. Is there any possibility that a disposal of any public, semi-public companies and government entities be shut down? What is the ultimate role of the entity in determining any disposal of any public or semi-public companies and government entities in general?
And still to come, Member of Parliament for the National Alliance gives some background on the budget and the CFT. I'll have the details to that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
Hi, I'm Switch.
And I'm Save.
And together we're here
to tell you about WIB, Switch, and Save Mortgage Offer.
Now at WIB, you can save and benefit from great specials when you decide
to bring your mortgage to WIB.
When you switch, WIB will offer you
payment of penalty fees up to 3 months interest,
payment of notary fees,
waive of bank closing fees,
and also the lowest interest rate.
Plus, you'll have the chance to win back 1 year of interest payment.
Visit any of WIB's mortgage specialists and benefit from WIB's Switch and
Hey, that's my part. And Save Mortgage Offer.
WIB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching SXM Daily News, and I'm Valerie Van Putten. And as we continue now with the Central Committee meeting, a Member of Parliament for the National Alliance, the Honourable William Marlin, also expounded on the country reform package and gave some background on the CFT, the budget, and the reason why capital projects were not realized.
But CFT was the overseer. CFT was the advisor. CFT said yes, and it was yes. CFT said no, it was no. And I can recall the budget when Minister Gibson was Minister of Finance, that the capital budget was approved. I think it was 38 million guilders. Approved. CFT approved it. Kingdom Council of Ministers approved it. And when the minister started the process to get the money so we can carry out the capital projects, CFT in his wisdom decided, hey, you know what? We believe that's too much money for St. Martin to spend in 1 year. So we are going to cap you at the most you can spend is 20, and by the time the jerking around finished, I don't even think we were able to get that 20. But how can you build a government? It's like someone starting a brand new business, and you're telling them, you got to start your business, but you're not allowed to make investments. Because you can't start a business. You can't start a car rental company without having a garage, without having an office, without having, more importantly, a fleet of cars. So if you go after an approval for you to start your car rental company, and you go now to borrow $5 million to invest in cars, and you are told, no, you have to buy the cars on your own strength, or buy 2 cars each year, and as the time go by, see if you can increase your fleet. You would never get to acceptable levels to be involved in a serious business. And the country is likewise. When we look at what is happening in the United States, where today they are battling over, I think it's $1.9 trillion in the COVID relief fund. Now, do they have $1.9 trillion in the bank? No, they're going to print it because they are the almighty US. If you look at how much they owe, among others China, it's even more. You owe an abundance of money, but yet they see it fit to inject $1.9 trillion to jumpstart the economy, to save the economy, to make sure that people don't go under. But what have CFT done to St. Martin in the past 10 years? No, you can't borrow. No, you can't borrow. No, you can't borrow. No, you can't borrow that much. No, you can't invest. No, you can't invest. No, you can't invest. And then now, when their conscience probably is bothering them, or they're feeling the pressure from the international community as to what's going on down there with you and your so-called other 3 partners in the kingdom. Now we come up with this brilliant idea of country packages, but not a bilateral agreement between St. Martin and Holland as to how we are going to look at helping St. Martin. We throw it all in a kingdom sphere. Country packages to be carried out by a Caribbean reform entity that is based on a consensus kingdom law. And yes, Madam Chair, you're so right. Up till now, we do not know what the COHO, the so-called Caribbean Reform Entity, what it actually is going to look like. Because reportedly there is a third draft. And when members or others quote things from the Caribbean Reform Entity, it's most likely from the first draft. But that was sent back by the Raad van State. It was sent back to the kingdom government. They made adjustments. We don't know what those adjustments are. And that too was sent back. And now there is a third draft at the Council of State awaiting a final advice.
And as we continue now in other news, Yesterday, Monday, March the 1st, the 1,000th vaccine was administered at the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, VSA, and the Collective Prevention Service, CPS, offices on the very first day of opening up for the administering of vaccines. The number was brought up to over 900 vaccinations carried out collectively by the St. Martin Medical Center and the White and Yellow Cross Care Foundation last week. Fittingly, Mederica Marshall Marlin, who is a retired community worker, was the happy recipient of the 1,000th vaccine. And she said that she's happy to receive the vaccine because it will help her body to protect her against the COVID-19 virus, and she would like to encourage everyone on St. Martin to go out and get vaccinated too. CPS is currently vaccinating the second priority risk group, consisting of persons 60 years and older. The total amount of registrations is gradually increasing and has passed the 5,000 mark on Monday. However, the number of registered people 60 years and older are still low, which is unfortunate because this group is most at risk of the severe side effects from the COVID-19 disease. More persons of this priority risk group are encouraged to register themselves because the Pfizer vaccine is especially effective within this age group. A low number of registrations might affect the next supply of vaccines coming from the Netherlands, where they are experiencing a severe scarcity of vaccines. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has also shown to be effective against the British COVID-19 strain, from which we now know that there has already been found on the island. This variant has caused sudden peak rise in active cases and hospitalizations in, for example, Aruba. So even though our current active cases are relatively low, we have to remain cautious. The Vaccination Management Team, VMT, therefore, encourages everyone, and especially if you are 60 years and older, to register to receive the vaccine. If you are under 60 but have a family member or friend who is above 60, please offer to help them with their registration if needed. You can also call CPS or email vaccination@stmartingov.org. The online registration form is currently available in Spanish and Creole and can be found via the following link listed below on your screen. For the paper-based COVID vaccine registration form, this can be picked up at several locations, including CPS at the Vineyard Office Park Building, the Division of Labor Affairs at the Simpson Bay Public Service Center in Simpson Bay, doctors' offices, the Government Administration Building, and select pharmacies. And now, in other news at this time, President of WIFO, Theophilus Thompson, speaking at the St. Martin Anti-Poverty Platform's weekly press briefing on Thursday last, February the 25th, tackled the employment agencies on the island. The WIFO board said that there needs to be some sort of control as to who is exactly in charge. We do, however, apologize for the quality of this video you are about to see, which was very poor. However, it was beyond our control.
It clearly states that employment agencies should not become the employer of employees, but they can assist companies that should become the employers in recruiting employees for the employment. Here in St. Martin, a couple of months, we have had a number of complaints from private employment agencies employees who have been exploited, working longer hours than they should, and not receiving the correct salaries according to hours worked. Within our labor laws still has working hours restrictions or conditions. Now, after working for X amount of hours and your shift doesn't pass those hours, your salaries should be made differently. The hourly wage should be adjusted accordingly. These agencies are not doing that. Therefore, persons who refuse to work like overtime and not receiving the right remuneration they are either suspended or being dismissed without receiving proper approval from the Labor Department for dismissal. In recent days, we have had employees who said that they received dismissal letters from their employment agencies and mostly in those security companies.
Now, turning to our weather forecast for March the 2nd, 2021. A weakened Atlantic high-pressure system will generate a gentle to moderate wind flow across the region. Patches of low-level clouds drifting with the wind may cause isolated showers. Subsiding seas are expected to peak at 7 feet during this forecast period. Small craft operators and sea bathers should continue exercising caution. So the outlook through Thursday midday, fair to partly cloudy and breezy with a few brief showers possible. Now, let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, Border Protection and Mobile Unit officially returned to Immigration and Border Protection Services. I'll have the details to that story when SXM Daily News returns.
The innovative Banco Matico contactless smart card. Your Banco Matico smart card is now equipped with a contactless feature for payments, so get ready to tap and go. Contactless payments are fast, easy, secure, and accepted worldwide at all Maestro-enabled contactless terminals. Tap for transactions equivalent to or less than 100 NAF, or the US dollar equivalent. You will receive notifications via email anytime you tap. Tap, tap, and pay fast with WIB. For more information, visit our website at wib-bank.net. Tap and go with your partner in progress.
Welcome back, viewers. This is SXM Daily News. And as we continue now, NVGEBE regrets to inform the general public that the water supply to Canagita Street and Back Street will be interrupted tonight, Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021, from 10 p.m. until 12 a.m. And now in Simpson Bay, the Sister Placencia Road, the Sister Modesta Road, the Simpson Bay Old Road will be interrupted on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, March the 3rd, 2021, from 2 p.m. until 6 p.m. This outage will allow GEBE to carry out the necessary maintenance to their distribution system. And as usual, they apologize for any inconvenience that this may cause. And as we end this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening, March the 1st, 2021, marked the Border Protection and Mobile Unit's return to the management of Immigration and Border Protection Services. The Border and Protection Services Mobile Unit has been under the management of the KPSM Police Force of St. Martin since 2016. However, the structure conflicted with the LIOL and the organizational decree. Given this fact, the Minister of Justice, the Honorable Anna E. Richardson, announced the department's rejoining of the IBP in December of 2020. The Minister of Justice hosted a welcome home ceremony for the officers and delivered a welcome speech. In her address, the minister described the move as a historic one for the Ministry of Justice. Further, she described the last few years as challenging for the department regarding implementing authority of the Border Protection and Mobile Unit. According to the minister, the Border Protection and Mobile Control Units were the missing links within the Immigration and Border Protection Services, IBP, department, consisting of Residence and Admittance, Border Protection and Mobile Control Unit. And with that, viewers, it brings us to the end of this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening. I am Valerie from Pitton, thanking you so much for joining me. And just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartinmediacenter.com for viewing. And on behalf of the SXM Daily News team, we thank you so much for watching and plan on meeting you right back here again tomorrow.